Hey guys, how's it going? We're back with another hand I played recently at my local casino. So we have two kings and everyone folded to the button. So of course we raise, make it 14, my standard raise size on the cutoff and button usually. An older rack in the big blind defense and flop is pretty favorable, but a little bit too
That's
favorable,
too good.
right?
Yeah, no. But yeah, it's
Yeah, too
definitely
good to be true.
walking a lot. But I still think betting here is, I could see like doing some checking, maybe against some really aggro players. It's probably one of the hands we want to have in our checking range. Um, but I think just betting seems standard, right? Just going like a small size because you could definitely just bet this board for like I think you could bet this board for a small size with full range. It's probably like a really high EV play against almost everybody in these games because
Yes.
nobody's gonna like check raise enough what they should be, right? And they're probably going to be even maybe like under defending, right? Like I think in a lot of spots like this, if you bet like whatever a third pot, people are probably meant to be defending with hands like like 10-9 of diamonds. Those type of hands are going to be like check raised or defended a decent amount. I think people just don't reach that, right? So
Yeah,
I
really good
think
point.
I think just betting. What do you think about size?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think range betting makes the most sense. And of course, when we want to range bet, we want to size fairly small. And of course, when we have two kings, we block most king X hands from our opponent. So it's really hard for him to continue with a ton of hands and never make the mistake of betting too big. So betting like 25 or 24, 30 bucks is
Mm,
definitely a huge mistake because you block villains calling range and you really want your opponent to float hands like ace 10 hearts, ace 7 hearts, all the gut shots, all the 4x, even hands like pocket threes, pocket deuces, right?
mm, mm.
You want those hands in his flop calling range. So yeah, betting like 1/3 pot size is a way to go.
Yeah, for sure. You could probably even possibly go smaller. Like I think
Yeah, with top set, why not?
yeah, and I think in these games as opposed to like playing online or something, you can be pretty flexible with your bet sizing. I mean, it depends on the player, right? If you're playing against like regulars, you want to be pretty
Consistent.
consistent with the different parts of your range. But if you're playing against like this guy, if you say he's kind of older reg, maybe he's not too in tune with bet sizing, especially playing against weaker players. I would definitely consider like if I had like a set of fours or something, you know, and we're deep stack, like then I would start sizing up, maybe go like half pot or bigger, but then, as you say, with the
Yes.
hand like this, with such blockers, you can just kind of manipulate your bet sizing and go small. So, yeah, so you bet a third, pretty standard. I mean, he's going to continue super wide here, right? Like he's not going to fold hands. Like I doubt he folds like any pair. There's no way.
Yeah.
Even just like ace highs, random backdoor hands, he should be continuing. So, um, good spot to start building the pot, obviously.
Yeah, thank God he calls.
Yeah,
Turn is yeah, an okay card. I mean straight gets there, 5-6 gets there. But also pocket eights improved, 8-7 have two pair now.
mm-hmm.
So not the worst turn card.
And now he leads out. I mean, this is a weird play
Yeah.
because he shouldn't have a leading range here. I don't think really because it's not like he shouldn't have 5-6 offsuit. That's the thing I think, right? Like if, if he had all the 5-6 offsuit that we don't have, then he could have a big nut advantage in a sense. But I don't think he should have that in his range. And he technically should 3-bet 5-6 suited a decent amount, even though he's not. But regardless, I think this is just not really a spot you want to donk. And if you're gonna donk, I don't think a big size makes sense either because you still have all the 5-6 suited. You could potentially even have 5-6 off if you're playing loose on the button, right? If you think you have a
Yeah.
huge edge, so you still have all the nutted hands in your range, and I think he definitely just wants to continue with a check here. But regardless, he comes out betting, so I don't really know. You play with the guy; it's hard to make sense of what his range would be here. I don't. Do you have like any idea?
Yeah, I think the biggest point here is big bet is usually big hand.
Mm-hmm.
So he's rarely bluffing. So I think when he has even a hand like 10-9 with backdoors, when he floated flop, he's check calling his hand on the turn. He's not the type of guy that is leading with weak draws on the turn.
Mm-hmm.
Or with weak hands in general, so you can definitely exclude hands like ace 10 or something. He's
Mm-hmm.
just check folding those hands. So I think his range is mainly two pairs, straights, sets, and maybe a okay king. Maybe one or two strong flush draws like ace 10
Mm-hmm.
hearts, ace 9 hearts, ace jack hearts, ace queen hearts, because he's the type of guy that's only throwing like aces, kings, queens, ace king
Yeah.
suited preflop, I think, even against the button steal.
Okay.
So yeah, and strong hands like 4-7s, 8-7, 7-4 suited, definitely maybe even 7-8 offsuit. Yeah, given this range, what would you do? Flat or raise straight away?
I think I like raising. I think, because we're so high up in our range, and we can't just put him on straights, right? I mean, I think calling is okay, but I do think raising will be better just because the strength of our hand. And as you say, he's going to have like a lot of value, and it's not just going to be 5-6, right?
Yeah.
And I think, as you said, he could still have some strong draws, right? And he might, I think even passive players could have a hand like say 9-10 of hearts, right? Like a big combo draw, he could definitely have. So I think that's
Yeah,
part of his
something like
range.
this. Yeah,
And then so
combo draw.
yeah,
Yeah.
we can definitely put in a raise here. And the 5-6 suited, if that's all, if he doesn't have 5-6 off, that's only 4 combos, right? So I think putting in the raise, and obviously we're still drawing to the nuts. I mean, it sucks if he comes in with a 3-bet, but that's life, right? You don't want to necessarily lose value because you're scared of that. So I like the raise here, and now he calls, and I think now we can be. I mean, he could still have 5-6, but I think a lot of players are just going to re-raise with the 5-6 there, right, with the flush draw out there.
Yeah, 100%. So on the river, I'm just praying that the river is not a heart, not a 5, and not a 6. Then I think we have basically the nuts, and we can extract another large bet on the river.
Yeah, for sure. So pretty good river, nice and safe. Now
Yeah.
he donks out here, which again is really weird. Donking half pot. It's just I don't really know what to make of it, to be honest. I mean, you see this type of thing in these games, but
Yeah.
obviously, I mean, with our hand, we don't have, at least thankfully we don't have too much to think about. Like it's just auto raise. But it would be interesting if we had something like, I don't know, like a king jack or king queen that we played this way. Although we probably wouldn't raise the turn, but if we had like ace king, I mean, I guess like a strong king x would just be an easy call, because he could just have some random, maybe like king x himself or like a misdraw occasionally. But
But it's still tough because when we raise turn, especially most older racks have really strong river leading ranges. So I think we can put him on, yeah, 4s, 7s, 8s, 8-7. Maybe a hand like 7-6 and 7-5. So gut shot plus pair on the turn.
mm-hmm.
Some people are bet calling a little bit wider on the turn.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, yeah, really hard to find a lot of weaker hands. I mean, even hands like King Queen, King Jack, maybe, but really only a few combinations. Cause when we raise turn, those hands are usually in villains check call range on the river. Cause we represent a strong hand on the turn, right? We have all the ace king and aces and sets and straights. So most opponents never will lead with just a king on the river. So the question is, how big should we raise? What do you think here?
I think jamming definitely for sure will be highest EV because I think we just pretty much want to target like his nutted range, right? I don't think. I mean, if he has 5-6, maybe he folds, but I think a lot of players are not capable of folding those in these games. And I mean, if you're like a super aggro player, it probably wouldn't even be correct to fold, right? If you could find the bluffs. So I think I would just jam because it's not necessarily that huge, and I think having the kings, even though it seems like we're blocking a ton of his like nutted range, I think it's kind of the opposite, like you were saying, because he doesn't really have any king x with the line he takes, right? Like his line's more conducive of like a 5-6, 7-8 pocket fours type of hand, right? So I think just targeting that range, just targeting the low straights and boats, I would just jam for sure, and just pray that he calls.
Yeah, makes sense. Really like your argument that jamming makes the most sense because, yeah, even when he has 5-6 or pocket fours, he's definitely not beating anything, right? He has a bluff catcher, and it's so hard for us to bluff here ever on this run out against his line. But you're right. I think people are not folding on the river often enough, so I should just rip my whole stack. As unfortunately, I raised a little bit smaller. I raised to 450-ish. Again, he's older. He makes some really tight laydowns, some good laydowns. He's playing the game for a long time. I thought about jamming, but I thought maybe he is capable of folding a strong hand. But in hindsight, I think you're right. When he has a full house, he's probably never folding, even though my line looks super strong. But still, having a full house in hold'em, in live cash is really hard. and it's even harder to fold those hands on the river. So I like the point of getting the max, ripping our whole stack in.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just going to be because obviously you just have to get called less often. And I mean, I think it almost because I think if you're bluffing here too, again, like using a jam sizing is just going to put on the most pressure, you know. So I think we really want to be polarized, and because we're not really raising. I mean, I think like 5-6. I mean, 5-6, we'd probably just. I mean, maybe 5-6 raise smaller, but maybe you could get away with jamming. Although that's kind of if he's a tighter player, then you might just run into boats too often. So I think we're just
Yeah.
so polarized to like boats ourselves, you know. And then what do you think if like you know because I think even against these players, I think we don't want to have much of a bluffing range at all, if any. But what do you think if you wanted to throw in like a couple combos? It's hard to find some because of your line too, though, because you raise turns. So what do you think if you're trying to find like a couple bluff combos? Because again, if you think he's a fairly tight player capable of folding hands like 5-6, excuse me, and maybe if he had like a random 7, then I think it is important to have bluffs in our range, right? Because the thing is, if you get caught in that spot as well, it can actually be good for your image because people know, okay, this guy's capable of bluffing, so I'm gonna have to call him down. I can't just like bet fold with like the top of my range, right? I think
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
become more dangerous. So what do you think about some bluffing combos?
Yeah, I think like 10-9, Jack 10 hearts, or like 5x, 6x hearts, something like this
Yeah,
is definitely a good turn raise.
yeah. I think like blocking. Obviously, we want blockers, blocking straights. Um, I mean, blocking boats would be the best if we had some type of 8x, which is kind of hard to find. Like 8-6, we were saying before could be something, but it's. I mean, you could potentially take that line with 8-6, right? If you're just like, okay, fuck this, I'm gonna try to get this guy off some type of like, you know, if he has some type of two pair or something, if I know he's tight, you know, you could definitely raise turn in that spot at some frequency, but I think you're generally going to be calling more, so it's hard to find too many 8x. But as you say, just maybe taking some of your misdraws at like a really low frequency, obviously, because you're blocking his misdraws, but again, you do want to find some type of bluffs in those scenarios. So I think it's important in game just to always think about it for the people watching. Just like think about, okay, if I'm jamming here for value, you know, if this guy's a competent player, I really should try to include some bluffs because otherwise I become too easy to play against. So yeah, something to think about. But unfortunately, he folded right, so I never get to
Yeah, he
see it.
tanked a really, really long time, so definitely like 3 or 4 minutes before folding. So yeah, he had definitely a strong hand.
Yeah, I wonder if
But
he.
yeah, we will never know which hand he had. But yeah, nevertheless, we know that. But I think here it's important to break down his range realistically and see that villain has not a king most of the time on the river, that his range is really, really small. And yeah, that we should raise turn against this strong range, that we should bet flop small, and of course, raise the river fairly big against his lead.
Yeah, for sure. Just try to go as big as you can. I think in a lot of spots, if you have like the top of your range, I think in most spots, unless you have like really horrendous blockers somehow, or the board is just like there's absolutely no bluffs ever, you know, or you're playing against like an ultra knit. I think with the top of your range, it's just never a bad idea to put in like massive raises, you know, and you'll find it's going to be higher EV. I think in a lot of spots, even if it feels kind of you know unnatural, I guess sometimes because you're like, how can anybody call? I think in these games, people do call, you know, because people do have hands. So yeah, good spot. Unfortunately, we didn't see. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy the hand, and we'll see you next time.
Yep, see ya, bye.